Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As we continue through the list of the incredibly important people in Chris's life, we now move on slightly further ahead in time to Chris's days at Piedmont, Virginia Community College, beginning in the year 2000. And, good lord, there's a lot to cover, so hold on to your hats. So, you're not gonna get a girlfriend this way or anyway. Mary, as quoted by Chris. Also, Chris, enough old angst against the grey-haired witch devil that I've put long behind me. Chris, lying through his teeth in November of 2007. And there she is herself, the retired Dean of Student Services at Piedmont, Virginia Community College. And, yeah. Mary Lee Walsh is a proto-troll and former Dean of Student Affairs at Piedmont, Virginia Community College. She thwarted Chris's love quest in its early years by allegedly ripping up his attraction signs, and eventually suspending him from PVCC for an entire year. She is one of the most important people in Chris's life, as she is one of the few people who refused to allow Chris to use his autism as an excuse for anything he wanted and tried to make him act like a normal human being. This, of course, meant war. You know what, if Chris had the fortitude at least to see things with the benefit of hindsight, even just a few years after this, Chris's response might have been a bit more rational, but as we know, no, that wasn't the case. The resulting conflict between Chris and Mary Lee affected Chris so profoundly that she became the sole focus of many early Sonichu sub-episodes. Even to this day, she is still arguably the supreme villain in the Sonichu series, a status that even Clyde Cash and Liquid Chris could never match. As such, she is revered and cherished among trolls for her actions both in real life and in Sonichu fanfiction. All hail the Dean. That is absolutely true, and when it comes to another important person that we'll be discussing next time, it's very interesting the level of respect that actually people will straight up have for people like Mary Lee Walsh, because one, nobody actually goes out of their way to try and get in touch with Mary, and also because, well, it's an example. There's no reason to get innocent people involved in this, including those who were just doing their job and keeping Chris absolutely in line, as best they could. By early 2009, many years after the college suspension episode, Chris had begun to express a desire for a reconciliation with Walsh. He began with the retcon of the fictional Mary's name to the slightly less defamatory Slowey Orion, implying, and later stating outright, that the character was not related to the real Mary. Even though we knew it was. For several months, Chris made conciliatory gestures, including sending a drawing to her house, but her only response was a legal summons. Since then, Chris has accepted that Walsh will never be able to truly earn his forgiveness. Also because Mary has just straight up decided she's done with this. What does Mary have to meet Chris halfway for? It's a bit late for that. Chris's continued feud with Mary Lee Walsh is illustrative to his propensity to hold severe grudges over seemingly minor incidents. In late 2013, 10 years after the August 2003 incident, Chris blamed Mary Lee Walsh in part for his continued decline in a series of Facebook ramblings, and referred to a Walmart manager who banned him from the store as a Mary Lee Walshing witching, bitch. Walsh slipped Chris attention until mid-2019, when she retired, when prompted him to tweet, because you can't really get... The only way you can actually make Chris seemingly do anything is just whenever news pops up that he is seemingly interested in, to wishing her a peaceful retirement until her time of passing, as well as offering constructive criticism, as he calls it, on how she could have better handled his interactions with him. He followed up by asking if she ever made any recorded statement about his apology drawing from 10 years earlier. She did, with legal summons. We literally just covered this. Chris revealed that Walsh's comic counterpart had become mayor of Quickville. Until she probably wasn't. Mary Lee Walsh in real life. Walsh was the Dean of Student Affairs at PVCC and a member of the Virginia Sexual and Domestic Violence Action Alliance. You could probably see almost immediately from this point why Mary was so vehemently against outside of all the other issues with Chris's attraction signs. She has also written a book about coping with college life, which perhaps unsurprisingly does not advocate attacking one's superiors with magical curses. Chris had first been scolded by her for passing around photocopies of his Sonichu's News Dash newsletter, but delivered the most crushing blow when Chris was loitering with his usual attraction sign. According to Chris, Walsh tore down his sign and told him that he would never get a girlfriend this way, or indeed at all. However, true this alleged statement may have been, there is virtually no chance Mary said it, as it would have highly been highly inappropriate and would have jeopardized her job. Mostly because Chris has this propensity to, lie through his teeth. There's also that. It should be noted that judging her by email exchanges with Chris, Walsh was anything but hostile towards Chris. Quite the opposite. In fact, versus Chris's version of events, Walsh was entirely reasonable in her conduct towards Chris and his attraction sign escapades. Chris, being the narcissist that he is, disregarded her warnings to stop posting his signs and continued to place this ad for his love quest in the main campus building. Walsh, taking umbrage at this clear defiance of her authority, took Chris to her office to discuss the situation with him. What exactly transpired during this meeting is a source of mass debate, as the only accounts made public are written by Chris and thus heavily biased. What is known, however, is that during the meeting, Chris pretended to converse out loud with Sonichu, relaying what Sonichu said to her. Nutcase. Then, after what Chris described as being talked down to rudely and hoarsely, he verbally attacked her in a fit of rage, going so far as to hex her with the dreaded Kamehameha. I don't know how Mary Lee Walsh would ever recover until she eventually did, by not paying attention to it. This event was later dramatized with plenty of wish fulfillment added in the short comic Christian versus and Sonichu versus the versus the Mastermind. In Sonichu issue 0, which was later remade as Witch Confront in Sonichu issue 2, Chris was told in no uncertain terms that he couldn't continue his love quest on campus, prompting him to slander Walsh on his website and turned her an attempt at an intimidating drawing. This little stunt got him banned from PVCC for a whole year and forced to take anger management classes and get psychiatric help before he was readmitted. I think it's fair to say that, Chris needed a lot more than just help. He needed a damn near, somebody to hold his hand and somebody to tell him, don't say that and get a grip of yourself, Chris. We all know these things never happened and, they probably should have happened, but there you are. Any positive effects these may have are not evident, and possibly they had no effect whatsoever. In his own words. So, as of Y2K3, I did the most logical, sensible, and inexpensive idea I could think of. I made a simple sign that stated, I am a 21-year-old and single male seeking an 18 to 21-year-old single female companion, along with a basic description of qualities I felt were best suited. Due to the fact that it described most every boyfriend-free 18 to 21-year-old girl, sadly though, not a single one even gave me a glance, a momentary pause, or even an excuse-making throat-clearing to read the sign or give me the time of day. And the few who noticed, that evil witch of the private villa of corrupted citizens, Mary Lee Walsh, a bunch of non-blue or black impersonating jerk-ops, mana-jerks, and every other, only a few total, son/daughter of a, mocked me and even crumbled my efforts and threw them into my face. It was serious, heart-shattering insults like that which literally shattered my heart to almost nothing and murdered my soul. Like as if I didn't already understand that love can't be hurried, but they all left a huge impression among the general population that having a sweetheart was illegal in Virginia, Thus, Virginia is for virgins, not lovers, was what I had fought for a long time with the dark forces that were forced into me. Bedding with my torturing past with the jerks of the Greene County school system during the childhood years of my life. Thank God for blessing me many happy years at Providence Middle School and Manchester High School in Chesterfield, rounding my feelings and attitude out for today. However, then there was emails with Mary. Mary, I've slept on it, and I have realised that note hanging is not the way to get attention, and I don't really want to meet with either you nor Susan, no offence. I'll tell you what, let's forget the meeting, and if you allow my newsletter to stay in distribution, I will do all of the following. I will never hang notes on the wall again. I'll consider stopping my silent treatment on Susan. I'll consider knocking you and Susan up my scale of respect each by 2 points. Please reply via email, Christian C. And here was Mary Lee Walsh's democratic response as always. Christian, Susan Hannafin and I will be able to meet with you on Monday, February 9th at my office at 3 p.m. I do not have any time this week that works with all of our schedules, so it will have to be next Monday. I normally send students notice of appointments by email, but you have asked that I corresponded to you through email. It is necessary that this meeting take place, so if Monday, if not convenient for you, please let me know and I will be able to set a time for Wednesday. Thank you so much, Mary Lee Walsh, by doing the only sensible thing and not playing into Chris's delusions, saying, no, this is what we'll be doing, and you will do it. Later. Hey, Mrs. Sanford, or should I say Ginny or Virginia. I am delighted to hear from you as well, and it's also good to know that you are still residing at that address. The DVD is under production, to be completed in a few days after February 24th, 2007. My 25th birthday. Yay. You may be able to help me in a portion of it now. There will be a slideshow projected from my PlayStation Portable featuring not only pics of me growing up, but the friends, teachers and relatives I've known and remembered, either from hard, like yourself, as well as yearbook signatures. Anyway, do you remember from the old class Sarah and Mika, the blonde girl with glasses, and the slow-talking African-American, whom Mrs. Echo told me over and over to get his dad to teach him how to shave? I remembered both of them from heart, but unfortunately I don't remember their last names, so it's harder to find them in the yearbooks. Could you please tell me their last names, please? As for what happened during PVCC in a nutshell, about mid-summer 2003, I realised upon revelation that I needed a girlfriend to make into a sweetheart from the ground up. So with a sign, which I've later realised that it made me slow in the mind, the R word, I've started my enduring love quest. The Dean of Student Services, Mary Lee Walsh, came out and tore my sign upright in front of me and said, "You're not going to get a girlfriend this way or any other way." That shattered my heart and murdered my soul. And it wasn't just her. The policemen imposters in brown, white and red, aka the jerk-ops, blue and black are the true police soldiers, also seriously intended the impression that Virginia is for virgins, not lovers. But it was a happy ending. In mid-2005, when I started playing the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG, I met this girl who, upon numerous conventions and conversations, art sharing and secret confidence, I've grown fond of, and my heart and soul recovered from the serious emotional and physical pain I've endured. Although she's not interested in a serious relationship, I still am fond of her, and I'm hoping that she may have a change of heart. I see what Chris tried to do there. That's actually quite clever. You may learn more about what had happened to me from the sub-episodes in my Sonichu comic book, which I have the leagueable images onto my Quick's Sonichu site. Those sub-episodes are based on my real-life events. Sigh. Well, that's about it for now. I hope you are doing well, and I will make that DVD copy for you after I finalize the master copy. Please tell the remaining faculty who are still working at Providence that I wish them the best as well. I still remember Mrs. Rogers, my old computer teacher, when she played as Woodstock in the 96 Snoopy play. That was just fun and cute. Take care, Christian Western Chandler. Okay. Then we get to Mary Lee Walsh in Sonichu itself, and yes, I am going to have to censor this out. After the first encounter with Mary, I put her into my comics from the start as my personal main adversary, with her horde of imposter police people, also known as Jerkops, and the notorious Count Graduon trapped in the glass orb on the scepter she wields. Chris, in regards to a comic where he claimed he was never meant to be about him. Yeah, that's the thing you want to know as well, is that Chris says this, but no, it's not the case whatsoever. Because of the stress Mary Lee Walsh caused, Chris brooded and obsessed over his heart-shattering defeat and began to reinvent the entire scenario so that he came out as the victor. As such, Mary Lee Walsh began to appear in a lot of Chris's works as a primary antagonist, specifically opposing his love quest. Yes, my fellow villain brethren, the time has risen for our divine retribution against Christian Weston Chandler. Yes, the autistic virgin has fallen into another dimension. We can seize the moment after extensive plotting and take down all that he has protected. Yeah, and they're not meant to be about him for some reason. Yeah, again, it's... In the comics, Walsh appears as a literal witch, complete with a broomstick. In an ingenious parody, she is the leader of the Private Villa of Corrupted Citizens, the PVCC. Her sinister deeds are motivated by a totally unexplained hatred of true love and people who seek it, making her a fitting adversary for the heart-stricken Chris and the deeply monogamous Sonichu. As the Witch of Hearts, Walsh's broader goal is to wage war against love itself, although her only tactic is to stop Jerkops into Quickville. To beat up anyone engaging in romance, she needed Graduon's help for the latter invasions, for no given reason apparently. She considers Chris the most important target of her malign actions and doesn't seem aware of the fact that true love occurs outside of Quickville as well. Mary's first appearances in the comics are in Sonichu issue 0, via a brief preview and several short comic strips that don't formally introduce her. Her formal debut in the canon is in Sonichu issue 2. Upon her introduction, Chris and Mary are already bitter enemies, yet Chris never explains the exact source of their hostility beyond stating that she once shattered his heart, and she is inexplicably frustrated by his dogged persistence in searching for love. It is, however, made immediately clear that their feud has become intensely personal. Both characters are fully prepared to fight to the death. In Sonichu issue 2, Chris ties together the ancient evil of the Anchuan prophecy with his own petty grudges by teaming Mary with Count Graduon. Imprisoned in a magical scepter, Graduon's powers is wielded by Walsh for much of the series. Together, Graduon and Walsh represent the dual miseries of his becoming an adult, the trauma of graduating from his beloved high school, and the stress of his disastrous collegiate career. To combat Walsh's powerful new accomplice in Sonichu issue 3, Chris gains the powers of Chris-chan Sonichu, escalating the original battle between a fat virgin and an old lady, to an epic struggle between a horribly drawn Sonichu OC and an old lady with a scepter. During her reign of terror, Walsh threatens the city of Quickville on multiple occasions. In Sonichu issue 2, she and Gordon create a golem to stomp the city. Much of the action in Sonichu issue 4 involves Chris fending off Walsh's agents, until he and the Crystal family storm PVCC and liberate the college from her evil, although Mary simply relocates to Menashi Nasu High to establish a new base of operations in Sonichu issue 5. She floods the town with her army of Jerkops to stage a coup against Chris and his loyal police force. When this plan begins to collapse, she and Graduon attempt to trap Chris in a dark mirror hole, but are only successful in ensnaring Crystal. When Chris later became stuck in the time void in Sonichu issue 7, Mary seizes the opportunity and prepares to attack Quickville in her most audacious invasion yet, laying siege with vast armies in Decepticlones in Sonichu issue 9, and causing untold damage before being defeated by Sonichu. Her evil is finally put to an end in Sonichu issue 10, when Chris uses the power of the Sonichu balls to become Colossal Chris-chan. He then destroys Graduan's scepter and easily overpowers her. But instead of killing her, like he killed 100+ innocent people in that very same issue, he paralyzes her, seemingly permanently, and sends her to jail. A consistent theme in Mary's story arc is that she is to blame for almost everything that maligns Chris or Quickville, mirroring that Chris's insane belief that the real-life Mary Lee Walsh was somehow the singular author of all his misfortunes. Even her conspirators are victims. Virtually all of her jerk-offs are simply brainwashed against their will, and even co-villain Count Graduan finds her to be selfish and wicked. Thinking only of her petty squabbles with Chris, and never about helping him get free from his scepter. To labour the point even more, while Chris suggests that some of her followers have good in them and are capable of redemption, Mary herself is pure evil. What an extremely boring character that is only made interesting through the notion about who she's meant to be, eh? As a result of the Miyamoto saga, many characters based on real-life figures were renamed. In an act of utmost subtlety, Mary Lee Walsh became Slaweel Ryan, or Slaweel the Witch. A devious maneuver indeed, as one can see the name is not entirely backward, and there are letters missing. Nobody could possibly figure out the connection, unless of course they happened to see the notice posted prominently on the Sonichu.net front page, detailing the full extent of the name changes. Walsh, being one of the primary villains in both the comics and real life, Chris obviously didn't want to change her name to an entirely unrecognizable form, as that would require originality. The name is an evolution of Haslor Eel Ryan, which Chris's version of MLW in his custom Yu-Gi-Oh cards. In all likelihood, he had only used the reverse code as a means to insult Mary with the card without fear of getting into trouble if someone saw it. Why he only thought he was going to get in trouble from this point and not from doing all of this in the first place is a point Chris doesn't seem to comprehend either. So there we are. In August 2009, Chris put up a page on the Wikipedia entitled Two Marys, in which he tried to explain the retconning of Mary Lee Walsh's name to Slaweel Ryan. Apparently, the evil Mary Lee Walsh had been Slaweel all along, except Slaweel changed her name from Mary Lee Walsh later on, while the real Mary was innocent the whole time. This, of course, makes absolutely no sense, as Chris has changed every instance of the evil Mary's name to Slaweel in latter edits of the comics, even during her introduction in Sonichu issue 0, where her character is introduced as Slaweel the Witch, and not Mary Lee Walsh. Chris had essentially created a paradox within his universe, having made a comic where Slaweel, caught by Chris and the police, apologizes to Mary for ruining her good name. But because of the retcon, Slaweel hasn't really had a chance to ruin Mary's name in the first... I am going to read that again, because I don't think I made any sense of this. Having made a comic where Slaweel, caught by Chris and the police, apologizes to Mary for ruining her good name. Okay, so that's one. But because of this retcon, Slaweel hasn't really had a chance to ruin Mary's name in the first place. So what's Slaweel apologizing to Mary for then? Oh my god, this... And all Chris had to do was create basically an original idea, but because, again, that was too much for Chris to attempt, he has to do this. I'm sorry, someone's playing the radio outside. Another glaring contradiction is that Slaweel says in the apology comic that she's sorry for using Mary's name in vain, and when I constructed the PVCC citizens and made Mary look like a fool for about 6 years. But on the Two Marys page, the caption appears below with a picture of Slaweel Ryan. This Mary later changed her name to Slaweel Ryan, and she was creating witch brew during night hours, and sharing them illegally with the bums outside of the building. She was fired from PVCC and then wanted to build PVCC citizens. Chris demonstrating his inability to create a cohesive plot. So hang on. I have to I know that there's going to come a point where I have to cover all of the Chris's his issues regarding writing, because, and let me tell you something right now, when I come to cover Chris's writing ability, oh good lord, that might be the single's longest video of my entire life, because Chris's writing is worse than his art, and that's being generous. Mary Lee Walsh in Soul Calibur. It is unclear whether or not Chris ever attempted to physically harm Mary Lee Walsh, but in a video he uploaded to YouTube, Chris lives out his fantasy of beating the daylights out of her. Chris creates himself and many other real-life friends and enemies in the video game Soul Calibur 3, so that he can take out his then pent-up rage in the most disturbing, passive-aggressive manner possible. It should be noted that Chris appears to struggle with defeating an AI-controlled Mary Lee Walsh on the easiest possible setting. Interesting. Possible reconciliation. Emphasis on possible. Beyond his efforts to retcon the fictional Mary, Chris began re-examining Mary's value to society by describing her good works on Wikipedia to distinguish her from the Wheel. This Mary replaced the previous one in mid-2000. She has done a good job with her role as Senior Student Services. She is currently and to be respected with open kindness and prosperity from all of the Piedmont, Virginia Community College students, peers, and employees. Also, then there's this apology. I'm sorry for using your name in vain, and when I constructed PVCC Citizens, I made you look a fool for about 6 years. And I'm sorry for letting Stawil Ryan let away with it for so long. I pray we can put this whole mess behind us, Mrs. Walsh. Notice that Chris isn't sorry for the shit he did to warrant her anger, only that he let someone with her name run around. And why bother having two separate Mary Lee Walshes if he made her the Wheel? Good question. The article rambles on and drifts alarmingly far from reality, strongly suggesting he used a quick Google search for research detailing this Mary's many achievements and services to Piedmont, Virginia Community College. However, the whole piece carries an insincere tone, suggesting that Chris was compelled to recognize Mary as a real person as some sort of therapeutic measure. Keep in mind, however, that he doesn't acknowledge that the real woman he interacted with wasn't a horned hat-wearing witch, simply that this Mary Lee Walsh was replaced in the real world by a good duplicate. In a very sad way, Chris seems to find it easier to rewrite reality than his own fantasy world. Mary was named on the Wikipedia as Chris's first woman of any mouth to respect with authority and kindness for the month of August. In his edited version of Encyclopedia Dramatica, he clarifies that he forgave Mary Lee Walsh for her past misdeeds, even though Chris himself was entirely at fault for all of their encounters. According to his edits, he also hand-delivered a framed copy of his apology to her office. But Mary simply contacted his parents and told them to keep Chris off campus altogether. Good job, Mary, because that's exactly what you're supposed to do. Good job, Mrs. Walsh. From this action, Chris inferred that Mary didn't care about him or their relationship, and Chris was crushed. Also crushed were any hopes of reconciliation, as after this incident, Chris soon reverted to precisely the same deranged mindset as before. Once again, imagining her as somehow orchestrating everything bad that happened to him. Besides that, Dean, Mary Lee Walsh, after I personally went over and handed her a framed hand-drawn apology of my angst against her, she sent me a trespassing notice. While my family and I do not accept it and send it back to her, I must say this is one hell of a thank you for going through the trouble and gas usage to personally apologize and make peace. Grudge. Because of course there would be. What were you expecting? Chris's anger toward Mary Lee Walsh continues well over a decade. Since his attraction sign was torn down at PVCC in a series of rambling Facebook postings made on the 2nd of September 2013, Chris began blaming various people for a temporary ban from Walmart, including Walsh. If it had not been for Mr. Manajerk, Megan Schroeder, and the internet troll / cyberbully breeding and meeting ground, Seville's Hobbies, Games and Toys, my family and I would not have to go through all of the emotional, depressing, and financial downfall to the depths of greatly poor and just getting by. And that Mary Lee Walsh, with a cold heart at Piedmont, Virginia Community College, for interfering with my sweetheart search and banning me from PVCC. And what you're seeing here, ladies and gentlemen, is just a Lego figure meant to represent Mary Lee Walsh, and Chris would torment her by just shaking like a bottle up and down. A few days later than this, when Chris was conclusively banned from Walmart altogether, he coined the term Walshing, a verb that evidently means not accepting autism as an excuse. I have just been intercepted by the lady manager. Has followed the steps of Mr. Snyder now. Banned me from the Walmart closest to my own house, she has proven herself to be a cold-hearted, uncaring, uncompassionate, lack of understanding, bigoted, discriminating, selfish Mary Lee Walsh witch. BITCH. On the 17th of December 2014, an apology letter that Chris had written to Walsh in August 2014 was revealed. True to form, Chris blames everything on factors supposedly beyond his control, and tries to be condescending and play the victim at the same time. He specifically tries to appease Mary for depicting her in the comic as a witch, operating on the presumption that a university administrator is gravely concerned with the way she is presented in DeviantArt level Sonic OC garbage drawn by a fat loser. Though, given the ease of encountering the webcomic, or even troll Rule 34 art with her name attached online, it's possible she might have found out the student who gave her a hard time was behind it and reacted accordingly. Upon Walsh's retirement, Chris stated that he has left his grudge behind and wished her a nice life, even claiming he didn't recall much about her. No, that's not true. Chris wrote a lot of his early comics about her, so yeah, of course he must remember. However, he immediately followed this up with a passive-aggressive critique of Walsh's conduct, showing he was upset that she tore the attraction sign. He also wanted to know if Walsh had made any statement regarding his 2009 apology, claiming it was added back to his pile of stresses. On the 29th of July 2020, Chris retweeted a post by an enabler named Helena Forenza, who claimed that the Mary Lee Walsh of the Solitude comic had reformed. Chris confirmed this, albeit while role-playing as Solitude during his body swap phase. Chris has also created a TSSSF card depicting a retired Mary. Actually, that is correct. Mary Lee Walsh is on our side now. Very good observation. On the 6th of April 2021, Chris brought up Mary Lee Walsh again, this time saying she had succeeded Brendan Fraser as the mayor of Quickville. Yeah, I'm gonna have to edit a lot of this out as well. So, new bio Mary. In Chris's artwork, Mary Lee Walsh has long grey hair and wears a golden helmet with red horns on it. However, it was much shorter than it later became in Solitude issue 7, as shown from shots from behind. In the early days of the Encyclopedia Dramatica page, as a result of Chris's shoddy drawing skills, it was inferred that Walsh's helmet was in fact a blonde bob cut, and the horns were growing out of her head like those of a devil. Additionally, once it became clear that Chris was viewing the page, it became fashionable to mess with him by drawing Mary, who he despised, as a sexy cartoon succubus who tempted Chris with her body, which he was sure to masturbate to. As a result, the most influential depictions of Mary have been Rule 34 fan art, depicting her as a voluptuous blonde with devil horns and occasionally a tail, usually wearing at most a skimpy purple mini dress and thigh-high boots. In Solitude, the animated series, she was depicted as being physically sexy but having unflattering sexual desires, such as shoving the staff containing Crown Graduon up her slot and demanding a recording of a minion shoving Chris's medallion up their butt and speaking with a man's voice. And by the way, there's another gallery as well, and apparently it's covered with like NSFW stuff, which I will make sure not to showcase to you guys because, well, oh, what a day already. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was the entire story of Mary Lee Walsh. A woman who was just doing her job, and Chris just chose to villainize and demonize just because Mary thought it was kind of, Chris thought it was the right thing to do for some reason. Now, I would be at the point where I said that this is sort of where I wanted to end the video, except, guess what, ladies and gentlemen, and I mean this with absolute sincerity, is the fact that, guess what, we're not even done yet. Because there's something very, very briefly I just wanted to explain, and it's the fact that nobody's had this sort of thing happen with me before, but I do remember there was an occasion at my previous job where somebody was absolutely obsessed with trying to like bury the hatchet with somebody, and they were basically just having none of it. They didn't accept any of their apologies, they didn't accept any of their gifts, they simply just did not get involved, and, well, that was that. So, what I'm going to suggest from now, ladies and gentlemen, is that you may want to take these things for what they are, because, and let me tell you something, it's not exactly as if Chris's tales have tried to gain acceptance and reconciliation. It's not an unheard of story, and I've seen the beats of this once before, because, well, I think the problem is that, again, you've got to consider Mary Lee Walsh's reputation and deciding that, no, she is not going to make any special exceptions for Chris. Chris has to learn to get a grip and behave by himself. Because, well, now because we know this didn't happen anyway, but that was the intention, and I have no reason whatsoever to suggest that all Mary Lee Walsh was trying to do was just drill it home to Chris about behave while you're on campus, abide by the rules, or we won't be having you back here. And that was what Chris eventually chose. So bear all these things in mind, and I cannot wait to see all of you guys again in the next video. Take care, and bye-bye for now.